You're listening to this podcast, so I know you've got a curious mind. Here's a helpful fact you may not know yet. Drivers who switch and save with Progressive save over $900 on average. Pop over to Progressive.com, answer some questions, and you'll get a quick quote with discounts that are easy to come by. In fact, 99% of their auto customers earn at least one discount. Visit Progressive.com and see if you can enjoy a little cash back. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. National average 12-month savings of $946 by new customers surveyed who saved with Progressive between June 2024 and May 2025. Potential savings will vary.
Being outside is good for us. It's that simple. And trails make it easy for us to walk, bike, and be active outside in our own backyards. On the trail, we see people moving, connecting with their communities, making the places where they live great. For 40 years, Rails to Trails Conservancy has led the way, creating trails across the country, making it safer and easier for everyone to get outside. They want you to get involved. Find your trail and start your journey today at railstotrails.org/iHeart and follow at Rails to Trails on social.
Queen Carvania stood haloed by the morning sun. An army hung on her every word.
My champions, I have sold my chariot on Carvana. 'Twas a lovely SUV, an inexplicably queenly offer. They're even coming to the castle to collect it. Tonight, we feast! An offer you can feast on. Sell your car today on Carvana. Pickup fees may apply.
Hi, welcome to Crime Clueless. We're your hosts. I'm Jenna.
And I'm Laura.
In the spring of 2010, a mother in New Mexico couldn't reach her son. His name was Eric Preimesberger. He was 29 years old, a loving father of two. He was the kind of guy who could land in a country where he didn't speak a word of the language and walk away with 10 new friends by dinner time. He and his wife had recently talked about moving to Oregon. He was excited about it. And then, nothing. No calls, no answers. His mother tried his wife instead and got a story. They'd had an argument, he'd grabbed a backpack, and he'd walked out on foot. Didn't even take his motorcycle scooter. He never went anywhere without. That was the story. And for a while, it was the only story that anyone had. But his mom, she didn't buy it. Not the scooter part. Not the timeline. Not any of it. His wife wasn't in a hurry to report him missing. In fact, when his mother asked her to do it, she refused. So his mother did it herself, weeks after her son had gone silent, with nothing to go on but her own certainty that something was wrong. She started making calls, filing reports, and refusing to let this get quietly filed away as one more man who walked out on his family. It would take her 4 months to find out exactly how right she was to keep pushing. And what she'd find would be so much worse than she had ever let herself imagine. But here's the part of the story that is the most outrageous. Even after everything came out, even after the truth was sitting right there in a courtroom, there's this Nevada law from 1911, so over 100 years old, that meant one of the people responsible for what happened to Eric never had to answer for it in front of a jury. Not one day in court and not one single charge. This is the murder of Eric Preimesberger. Eric was born on July 9th, 1980 in Bozeman, Montana. His family moved to Farmington, New Mexico when he was about 10. And that's where he really grew up. That's where he called home. If you asked where he was from, he would tell you Farmington, New Mexico. He graduated from Bloomfield High School in 1998 and then went on to San Juan College for auto body repair training.
So he didn't claim to be a Bosemite?
Nope.
From Big Bang Theory?
That's right. Nope.
Is that how he says it? Bozemanite?
A Bozemanite? Yeah.
Is that what he says?
So. Yeah.
That's what I always think of from Bozeman, Montana, is when Sheldon goes there and gets robbed and then turns around and leaves. he decides to leave because their apartment got broken into.
Oh, that's
And he's like
right.
scared to death. And he finds that like Bozeman, Montana is one of the safest cities in the country. So he goes to live there and then someone steals his suitcase at the airport. So he turns around and comes back home.
I guess crime is everywhere.
Like as soon as he gets there, someone steals, they're like, can I help you with your bag? And he's like, oh, sure. And then they run off with it.
Oh my gosh. Oh,
That's what I think of there.
but Bozeman.
But yeah, so sounds like he was pretty hands-on guy doing auto body repair training.
Yeah, very hands-on. He ends up in Reno, Nevada, and he's working as a motorcycle salesman. Now, the thing that really seemed to define him, at least from everything his family said about him, he was obsessed with scooters. And not like casually into them. He had a yellow and black Honda Ruckus that he rode with a local club called the Battle-Born Scooter Crew.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
Yeah, I love
It's
that.
like a motorcycle gang, but a scooter club. Is that?
Yes, exactly. With like the name and everything.
Yeah.
Now, he raced with them. His mom actually said he had, quote, the trophies and the broken bones to show for it.
Oh, wow. That's pretty cool. That's
Right?
pretty cool. I like that.
His friends called him Squirrel. And I don't know the origin story on that one, but it stuck. Now, by the time we're talking about, Eric's 29. He's been married to his wife, Christy, for about 7 years. And they have 2 kids together, a daughter who's 6 and a son who's not even 2 yet. And here's a detail that I think matters a lot going into this story. Eric had lost his own dad when he was young. And by every account, that shaped him. His family said that he made a point, like a real conscious decision, to be the best father he possibly could be to his own kids.
That's actually really sweet and such a good thing that something bad happened to him, but he changed and didn't follow that same path, but he was trying to make sure and be better for his kids.
Right. Like it defined him, but in a positive way.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, his mom is a woman named Kay Wilson, and she's going to come up a lot in this episode. And one of the things she said about him has stuck with me. She said, and it's what we mentioned at the beginning, he could go to a country where he couldn't even speak the language, but he would make all of these friends. He's just very personable, somebody that people are instantly drawn to.
Yeah, so seems like very charismatic and friendly.
Yeah.
It really just says something about someone to go be with people you can't even talk to, but come out with friends. That's really cool.
Yeah, it really is. So that's Eric, fun-loving, family-obsessed, scooter guy. They are working through some financial struggles at the time, like a lot of young families do. And he and Christy are about to make a decision that's going to change everything. So by April of 2010, things are in motion for a big change. Eric's been out of work, money's tight, and he and Christy have decided the family's going to leave Reno and move to Eugene, Oregon by the end of the month.
Oh, that's a big change. So they just wanted like a fresh start somewhere else?
Kind of. The plan wasn't just move and figure it out. They had an actual business idea. Christy's brother lived in Eugene, and the plan was for the two of them to go into business together. They were planning to build and then sell yurts.
What is a yurt? I've never even heard of that before.
It is like a round tent structure. It's described as like a Mongolian outdoor shelter. That's how one article about this case described it. Like a very specific Asian style tent, basically.
Oh, interesting.
So
But they build them so they're more like secure, not like a pop-up tent.
Right. Something that like stays up. Yeah.
Okay.
This brother, this idea didn't come from, a random drawing it out of a hat. His name is Timothy Wayne Morgan. He's 25. And when we talk about him, the yurt thing will make more sense. But because the family's moving up to where he lives, he comes down to Reno to help them with the move.
That's really nice.
Yeah. Now, Timothy isn't just Eric's brother-in-law. So Timothy is Christy's brother, but Timothy and Eric had been friends since they were kids. And I couldn't really find exactly where they met, but I'm guessing that's how Eric and Christy end up married. But Timothy isn't just someone that Eric knows only through marriage. They're really good friends. They've known each other basically their whole lives.
Okay. So there's some real history there and not just, we're going to go start a business with my brother-in-law, but also with my best friend.
Yeah. Now, Timothy himself is a bit of a character. In Eugene, he was known as a spiritual healer. He performed what were called sound healings. So he would use these vibrational sounds as like an alternative therapy for stress and also physical ailments. And people in Eugene actually viewed him as kind of like a spiritual guru, and he had a whole following.
Oh, and they're making this whole change to build yurts?
Well, I think it's to sell to people that are part of this following for them to have their own place to do these sound sessions, maybe.
Okay.
Yeah. Remember the detail about the following? That's going to come back around later in a way that's genuinely one of the stranger parts of this case.
Okay.
So Eric's unemployed, the family's struggling. Timothy has come to help them move. And there is a mention that Eric had recently hurt his ankle. So he was especially glad to have his brother-in-law there for the physical side of some of this big stuff that he wouldn't have to do on his own. Everything on paper looks like a family pulling together to help each other through kind of a hard stretch.
But I'm sure something else is coming.
How can you tell?
That's usually where these head.
Yeah, true.
We wouldn't be here if that wasn't the case. So
accurate. Now, this next part of this story isn't fully learned for 2 years, but chronologically, it's what happens next. And it's where everything starts.
Okay.
On April 20th, 2010, that's Eric and Christy's wedding anniversary. And according to Christy's own trial testimony, she wasn't feeling very well that day and she didn't want to go out and celebrate. She says that Eric got upset about it, cursed at her, and left the house.
On their anniversary, it was the same day?
Yeah, on their anniversary. She says he doesn't come back that night. The next day, April 21st, he does come home, and the argument picks right back up. Christy testified that he pushed her and threatened to, quote, kick my ass.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, rough anniversary.
Yeah.
And this is where it gets bad. According to her testimony, her brother, Timothy, and I can't even figure out why, she says he had been hiding in a closet in the house this whole time.
What? That's so bizarre. He's just hiding in the closet.
I feel like there's a gap in this story. Why are you in the closet? He knows you're there to help him move. But
they're like, oh, we don't have a bed. You can sleep in our closet.
Right? I don't get it. But that's the word she used. He was hiding. And she says that when Eric pushed her, Timothy came out of the closet and confronted him.
Okay, so this is a physical thing now between the two of him, between Eric and Christy. Did he get physical with the brother-in-law too?
Yeah, that sounds like what it turned into. There's some kind of fight between Timothy and Eric, but then it actually seems to calm down. Timothy goes into the kitchen to wash his hand off. He said he'd heard it in their altercation, and Eric sits down on the couch. And then Christy testified she turned around and she saw her brother swing a baseball bat and strike her husband in the back of the head.
Oh my gosh.
Awful.
He's just sitting there on the couch and he comes at him with a bat.
That's what she testifies in court.
Wow. Seems a little bit, like you said, like something's missing because
Mhm.
if you're best friends, you don't just start beating him with a bat.
Right. Where did you get
Like
the
a
bat?
little overkill there.
Yeah. Were you hiding in the closet with the bat, or what is going on here?
Yeah.
And, you know, if the fight had calmed down, why are we continuing it? If he's sitting on the couch and you're in the kitchen and you just come back
Yeah.
with this?
Yeah. You just come back and start swinging.
Right. Now, after neither one of them called the police, neither one of them called an ambulance, and Eric Preimesberger died in that house either during or very shortly after that attack. And the two people who were there with him made a very different choice about what to do next.
Okay. So this is different story than what we started out with here, where they said he left and never came back.
Right. That's her calling to say he walked out, but that is just to buy them time, I think. And
Okay. So this is the real story of what happened, we think.
this is what played out in court.
Okay.
So, like I said, in that moment, Christy and Timothy make the decision to not call anyone. They don't try to get him an ambulance. And it sounds like he didn't die right away, which
Yeah.
is horrific, being in that kind of
Yeah.
pain and just being left.
Wow. And they don't call the police or anything, I'm sure, if they're sounds like they're trying to hide this.
Right. Instead of trying to get him help, they move his body into a vehicle, and it's described in the reporting as an SUV. Over the next several days, the vehicle gets driven around and repositioned in different parking lots around town, specifically so that it wouldn't sit still long enough to draw attention.
Wow. They've just put him in this car and they're driving all over town trying to hide the situation.
Yeah, for days. And I assume it's while they decide what to do next. The choice they make, it isn't one you would assume. They bought a commercial freezer from a business that was going out of business, and he paid for it in a way that wouldn't draw attention.
Okay. And at this point, it's like, it's already been quite a while. And if he's been outside,
I mean, the end of April, that can be pretty warm. And just
Yeah.
leaving him in, yeah.
Reno, yeah.
So they're not buying the freezer to use as a freezer. They're buying the freezer to function as like a coffin that I'm sure
Yeah.
they're hoping won't be discovered, will be easier to conceal the smell of decomp. According to prosecutors, this was supposed to be his coffin, and they packed it with salt and fertilizer, which, if you know anything about decomposition, is not a coincidence. In true crime fiction, fertilizer and salt are traditionally used to slow down decomp, control the odor. Research on this is mixed, but it's a common theme when you're reading true crime books or watching movies. So packing the freezer with salt and fertilizer reads as some research that they did, and this attempt to control and slow down the decomposition process. And again, not a rushed decision. They spend days deciding what to do.
So really it's calculated. As they're driving around with him in this SUV, leaving him places, they're researching what to do next, basically.
It sounds like it. So not this single frantic night. It was this conscious, deliberate choice on how to handle it. After the body went in the freezer, at some point it breaks while it's being moved into a storage unit. They moved that freezer with the body in it to a storage unit in Eugene. They kept the freezer in a rented storage unit for a while. Next, he rented an enclosed U-Haul trailer. He put the freezer and Eric's body inside it, and he drove out to this remote area near Frenchman's Reservoir in Plumas County, California, which is a really rural, forested area. It's only about 40 minutes northwest of Reno. Somewhere out there, he'd already dug a shallow grave. He backed the trailer as far into the woods as he could get it, tilted the freezer out of the back, and buried Eric. Then he turned around and drove the opposite direction to what he described as a totally random spot in the desert where he burned everything. He burned the bloody rags from cleaning the house, the bat, the shovels, the inside of the freezer itself. He used firewood he'd bought locally and gasoline as an accelerant to make sure it all burned completely.
And how does one person even do that alone? That's a lot of work.
That's a lot of work. And You're right, it's a lot of work. So he didn't do it alone. This is where it circles back to the sound healing world we talked about. Timothy had that following in Eugene, people who genuinely believed in his healing work.
Okay.
And one of them is this young guy, about 20 years old, and he helped him move that freezer. Timothy told him it contained items connected to, quote, bad entities that needed to be dealt with spiritually.
Wow. So he used this healer thing to convince this guy to help him bury his brother-in-law.
Yeah, unknowingly help dispose of a body, which is awful.
Yeah.
Timothy had the person helping him turn around while he was doing it, and the man that helped him said it smelled very much like decomp, but he trusted Timothy and he assured him it was just bad entities that they were getting rid of. And it seems like this might have happened sometime in mid-June, but I don't have a specific date. This guy believed that he was helping a mentor, this spiritual cleansing ritual. He honestly had no idea that he was helping to bury a body.
That's genuinely so disturbing.
Yeah.
How do you even do that to somebody?
Right? It's so
It's one
selfish.
thing to have someone that comes with you willingly, but tricking someone because of your healing guru work in their community is totally different, I feel like.
Agreed. Absolutely. So by the time anyone's really looking for Eric in earnest, he's already been gone and buried for weeks. And the two people who know exactly what happened to him are now actively running.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever think about switching insurance companies to see if you could save some cash? Progressive makes it easy. Just drop in some details about yourself and see if you're eligible to save money when you bundle your home and auto policies. The process only takes minutes, and it could mean hundreds more in your pocket. Visit Progressive.com after this episode to see if you could save. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states.
While all of this is happening, from the outside, it still just looks like a missing husband case. And Christy's version of events hasn't changed. She's still maintaining Eric got upset, grabbed a backpack, walked out on foot, left his scooter, his family behind. And now she mentions he told her that they would never see him again.
Which, knowing what we know now, is just horrendous.
Absolutely. And also, we know he was devoted to being the best father he could possibly be. He's not walking out on his two kids to never see them again.
Yeah.
But at this point, nobody else knows any of those details yet. So this story has to actually hold up under real scrutiny, and it starts falling apart almost immediately, and mostly because of one person, Eric's mom, Kay.
Yeah, she's just not buying it.
No, not buying a single word of it. She keeps coming back to the scooter. Specifically, Eric never went anywhere without that thing. So it doesn't compute for her that he'd walk away and leave it behind. You need some way to get somewhere, right?
Right.
On May 17th, 2010, she files the actual missing person report, not Christy.
So up to this point, had Christy just been telling his family like he left and she hadn't filed anything?
Yes. And she might have told them that she filed something, but she's telling them that he walked out on her. He doesn't want to be found.
Right.
She's like, yeah, he left, but I'm not filing a missing person report. It's just so you don't wonder why I didn't call at all. But I'm telling you, he just left on his own and said I'd never see him again. And then it took his mom being like, hey, this needs to be a missing person report. And here's why. Here's what happened. I haven't heard from him. If he just left, and where's his phone? Did they put it with him? Did they look into it? I love to see the phone things, and I couldn't find any of that in this one.
Interesting.
Yeah. And, his mom's trying to contact him and not getting an answer, other family, friends, etc. There's not a boss at this point to wonder why he just stopped showing up for work because he was out of work. They were making this move. So it's not like anyone that lives around them. They're not, he could have went to Eugene early. Like they're in this chaotic, massive change of life that helps have less people digging into where he is.
Kind of hides things a little bit.
Right. Now, once the report is filed, Reno police escalate it fairly quickly. They reclassify it from a routine missing adult case to what's called a suspicious endangered missing adult, and it gets moved over to the robbery homicide division.
Oh, so this is early on. They suspect something's wrong.
Yeah, it's a pretty significant signal that they moved it over so quick. It's not treating this as a guy who left his family. They're treating it as a case that they need to spend time and effort on. Now, at the same time, Christy moves. She leaves Reno and relocates to her brother Timothy's house in Eugene. And this is just 8 days after Eric supposedly walked out.
So by the time that Kay files the report, Christy's already living in Eugene.
Yes.
It's really fast.
It is. Here's where it gets a little confusing. So let's break it down. Christy packed a pod, one of those portable moving and storage units with the family's belongings, about 8 days after Eric was killed. She had it shipped from Reno to a storage warehouse in Eugene, Oregon. She told police she packed everything of Eric's into it, including, she specifically mentioned, his scooter. Investigators eventually learned that Christy had rented a portable storage unit and kept it at a facility in West Eugene. So police get a search warrant. They bring in cadaver-sniffing dogs. 3 separately trained dogs run across 2 different sniffs. All 3 alerted on the exterior of that unit to the scent of human decomp.
Wow, so they think that they found something already.
Right, they think, we got it, we're about to crack this case wide open. So police got a search warrant, and when they open it up, nothing. No remains, just furniture, household items, and Eric's scooter. After that search came up empty, Christy moved the pod's contents into a new storage unit with a different company and gave them a fake residential address to do it. Investigators later confirmed that address didn't belong to a home at all. It actually belonged to a pharmacy. And this part is hard for Eric's family because at the time, this created this window of false hope. But if there's no body in that unit, maybe he really is still out there somewhere.
Yeah, that is brutal because that hope probably was almost worse.
It really is. Now, because we know exactly why nothing was in the unit, we know the freezer had been moved out to California weeks earlier. The dogs weren't wrong. They just were late. For months, this case just sits there. Eric's been gone since April, and it's now August, and there's no real movement. And then everything changes, and not because of brilliant detective work, but because of pure dumb luck.
I love when a case breaks open because of something completely unrelated.
Yeah, and this is exactly that. On August 10th, 2010, Timothy gets arrested in Roseville, Minnesota, nowhere near Nevada, nowhere near Oregon, on a completely unrelated felony drug possession charge.
What was he even doing in Minnesota?
Great question. And honestly, even at the time, nobody seemed totally sure how he and Christy ended up there. But he gets picked up after police responded to a report of a suspicious item left in a motel room that he'd been staying in. And Christy's with him. She gets arrested too. She's arrested on charges of marijuana possession and child endangerment.
Well, the kids are with them in Minnesota too.
Yeah, they've been with them the whole time. Those two, and they're so young, they've been dragged along through all of this.
Those poor kids. It's really sad when the kids have to go through this.
So
It's
sad.
not their fault.
No, heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Now, once local Minnesota police run their names, it connects back to a warrant that Nevada had put out for murder. And Reno detectives, who remember have been quietly working this case for weeks and months, immediately fly out to Minnesota to interview both of them.
So this drug arrest is basically the accident that finally catches them.
Basically, yes. And there's one more layer to know how they got caught. Christy's own mother is the one who tipped off Reno police to exactly where Timothy was. Christy had called her mom after being questioned by Minnesota police, and her mom passed along that information.
So after they had questioned them about the drug possession, she called her mom, she tipped off the Reno police, and then they contacted those officers to come and speak with them.
Yes. And
Okay.
Minnesota police had also seen the warrant, but there were more things at play there than just like one reaching out or the other. Now, her mom gave police the location, and 3 days later, on August 13th, Kay Wilson, so Eric's mom, gets the call. Reno detectives tell her that both Timothy and Christy are in custody.
Are they telling her that they're in custody for Eric's murder at this point, or just that they're in custody from something else?
Well, they're calling to tell her that they're in custody for the murder. They also tell her that Timothy has confessed.
Oh, okay.
It didn't take much. He tells investigators that he struck Eric with a baseball bat. And then he tells them that he and Christy moved Eric's body to the laundry room. And a few hours later, they realized he had died.
So he was still alive after they hit him and they just moved him to a different room in the house.
Yeah. Isn't that awful?
Yes.
That
Makes me wonder if they were on drugs too at that point.
I've wondered that too, with the connection to being arrested in Minnesota on drug charges. It's
Yeah.
very possible because it does feel like it escalated so fast.
Yeah, really fast.
Yeah,
That could explain some of it.
very possible. It's also awful that the death wasn't instant and they had this window. They could have called an ambulance. They could have called police, but they didn't. They chose to cover it up and run.
Yeah.
On August 19th, 2010, detectives recover Eric's remains near Frenchman's Reservoir because Timothy had told them exactly where to go and look.
Wow. So 4 months later, right?
4 months.
They know for sure.
Yeah.
That seems kind of fast from a lot of the other ones that we've talked about, but still like such a long time for his family.
Yeah. I can't even imagine the time that families spend in that limbo place when it comes to
Yeah.
missing persons.
Well, and even if it's 1 month or 2 years, it's still all so heartbreaking and terrible for that family.
Agreed. So 4 months to the day almost. That date, August 19th, becomes Eric's legal date of death, not April when he was actually killed, which is interesting because some of the reporting says, he's missing and he was 30 because his birthday was in July and they hadn't found him yet. So there's this kind of weird timing that comes with that.
Yeah.
It's in August when the medical examiner's office finally received him.
Such a strange thing to sit with. He had been dead for months, but it's only official once they find him.
Yeah. And there's one more piece to how they even found the exact spot. This young man from Timothy's healing circle, once he heard about the arrest on the news, he came forward to police on his own and told them what he knew, which helped lead investigators to those remains in a easier way. He could lead them more directly to the spot.
Yeah. So he had no idea he did anything wrong. And then he's the one who helped solve it, really.
Yeah. And that's probably
I'm sure he
smart.
was freaking out.
Yeah, exactly. Like, are they going to charge me as an accessory or I don't know. But
Yeah.
without him coming forward, it could have taken a lot longer to find Eric's remains. So now that Timothy has confessed and Eric's remains have been found, the legal process actually starts moving. Timothy is charged with open murder. And in Nevada, that basically means the charge starts broad. And it's up to the court to determine the degree once all the evidence is in. So they don't have to charge him with manslaughter or first-degree murder. They have open murder. Timothy is extradited back to Reno on August 23rd, 2010.
And what about Christy at this point?
Christy is held too, but not on a murder charge. She's held on a material witness charge with cash bail set at $100,000.
So she's not a suspect, really, just a witness.
Not officially, no. She's considered the eyewitness that the state needs to make their case against her brother, which is already a strange position to be in, and it's going to get even stranger. And we'll get into exactly why later on.
Interesting.
Yeah. Let's stay in 2010 for a minute. In October, Timothy pleads not guilty.
Even after he confessed back in Minnesota?
Even after confessing. And that's actually really common in cases like this. A confession doesn't automatically mean a guilty plea, especially once defense attorneys get involved and start building their strategy. And Timothy's strategy becomes clear pretty quickly. In the time between his arrest and trial, he gives investigators a lot of different versions of what happened.
Different versions? Like, what else does he say?
At various different points, he claims a drug supplier he refers to as El Fuego was actually the one who killed Eric. At another point, he says a van full of masked kidnappers grabbed Eric right off the street. Eventually, though, he lands on self-defense, claiming he believed his sister was in danger and he grabbed the bat to protect her.
Seems like that's what he should have started with instead of
El
the other,
Fuego?
not believable things. Someone kidnapped him, a masked van pulled him off the street. Like,
Yeah, how do you know that? Did you see it?
probably just go with the self-defense there is probably his best bet.
Yeah, the other ones are so strange, and I don't know.
Well, it's like, also, if you saw masked kidnappers grabbing him off the street, why aren't you calling the police?
Mhm.
Like,
Or even a drug dealer coming in. Why aren't you
Yeah.
calling police?
report it. Yeah.
Exactly. It's odd that you can believe anything after having so many versions of events. And, all of it becomes this real legal question heading into trial. In February of 2012, there's a pretrial hearing specifically about whether Timothy's actual recorded confession can even be used as evidence.
Why would that even be in question?
His defense team argued that all of these wild, shifting stories, the drug dealer, the kidnappers, would be so damaging and prejudicial in front of a jury that they shouldn't be allowed in, separate from the confession itself. Now, prosecutors pushed back hard on that. Their argument was basically, these lies matter. They show consciousness of guilt, If you're innocent, you don't need 4 different cover stories.
Exactly. That's a pretty strong point, honestly.
Right. The judge agrees with you. He ruled the confession, lies and all, was admissible, which meant that by the time this actually goes in front of a jury, not that long later, in the spring of 2012, the jury is going to hear Timothy Morgan, in his own words, contradict himself over and over again. Also, during pretrial motions, Timothy's defense team tried something unusual. They wanted the jury to hear that Christy had legally changed her name from Christy Morgan to Mallory Colisi. If that name Mallory sounds familiar, there's a reason. Mallory Knox is one half of the murderous couple at the center of the 1994 Oliver Stone film, Natural Born Killers. The defense argued the name change was probative, relevant to her identity, her credibility, maybe even her state of mind. The judge, though, he wasn't having it. His response, more or less, somebody changes their name to Cinderella, does that mean she's a princess? He indicated he was inclined to keep it out of trial, pending further briefing. So make of that what you will. I found it interesting. The trial starts in April of 2012, almost 2 full years after Eric was killed. The very first witness the jury hears from on day 1 is Christy.
The wife taking the stand against her brother.
Yeah, basically. She is the one who walks the jury through everything.
Being outside is good for us. It's that simple. And trails make it easy for us to walk, bike, and be active outside in our own backyards. On the trail, we see people moving, connecting with their communities, making the places where they live great. For 40 years, Rails to Trails Conservancy has led the way, creating trails across the country, making it safer and easier for everyone to get outside. They want you to get involved. Find your trail and start your journey today at railstotrails.org/iHeart and follow at Rails to Trails on social.
She said she called Timothy in the early morning hours of April 21st, asking him to fly in and help with the move. He rented an SUV once he landed in Reno. The day itself, she said, had 2 arguments, not one. First, Eric started gathering his things upstairs. She says it looked like he was leaving. Then a second argument broke out, and this one is the one that turned physical. She said Eric shoved Timothy. They grappled. While this was happening, Timothy hurt his hand in the struggle. Then, according to Christy, things calmed down. Timothy went to the kitchen to wash his hand, and Eric sat down on the couch. And then Christy said she turned around, and her brother hit her husband in the head with a baseball bat. She said she ran upstairs first, not to Eric, to her kids' bedroom doors to shut them to make sure her kids didn't come downstairs and see what she had just seen. Now, after the bat came down, Timothy believed, or at least told police he believed, that Eric was still alive. Christy said she panicked. She didn't call 911, despite, by her own account, having suggested it to Timothy or to Eric, but she says no one responded. In a panic, he and Christy dragged Eric's body from the living room into the laundry room, and they left him there for hours. When Timothy finally went back to check on him, Eric was lying in a pool of his own blood, and he was, in Timothy's own word, stiff. She started cleaning. Timothy went to the garage for a tent to cover the body. Christy testified that part of the bat had broken off and stayed in Eric's head after being hit. She said the bat was Timothy's, but it had been at their house for years and years, and it had been sitting by the back door. On cross-examination, the defense pushed hard on her credibility. They got her to admit to a string of specific lies she had told. For example, to Eric's mother, Kay, and to the detective looking into Eric's disappearance. She talked about a fabricated story for why Eric's scooter was left behind. She talked about a claim that she'd heard a woman and a child's voice on a call from Eric's phone, which she now says was probably just a butt dial. The defense's strategy was pretty clear. They were trying to paint Christy as this practiced, comfortable liar, someone whose account of self-defense deserved exactly as much skepticism as everything else she told police.
And this is really the first time any of this has been said in public, right?
Exactly. First time in open court under oath.
Just having to say that out loud in front of a room,
Yeah.
I don't even know.
Right.
Awful.
Awful. And
even more awful for her to say, and we watched this happen and we hid him and didn't do anything about it. This man who's my husband, father of my children, left him in the laundry room to pass away on his own.
Yep, exactly. Now, here's where it gets interesting from a legal strategy standpoint. When it's the defense's turn, Timothy's attorneys don't call a single witness. They don't present any evidence at all. And Timothy himself never takes the stand in his own defense.
Wow. So after everything, different stories, the confession, they just really don't argue back.
Yeah, they give nothing, which is a real gamble. Sometimes that's a sign a defense team doesn't think they have much to work with. Other times it's strategic. They're betting that poking holes in the prosecution's case is enough without giving jurors anything additional to pick apart.
How'd that bet pay off for them?
Not well. No. The jury got the case and they came back real quick with a verdict. It only took an hour and a half.
Oh, wow. That is really fast.
Yeah, especially for a murder trial.
Yeah.
They found him guilty of second-degree murder with a deadly weapon. Not first degree, which matters because it means the jury didn't find enough evidence of premeditation, that this was planned out in advance, but guilty nonetheless.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense. It sounds like from Christy's story, it was just in that moment because of what was happening.
Exactly.
But at least there's some justice here.
Yes. Now, here's the part that is one of the most gutting parts of the whole case. After the verdict comes down, Eric's own mother, Kay, speaks publicly. She says she doesn't believe the right person was convicted.
Oh, so his mom doesn't think Timothy did it?
No, she said it directly. She believes they got the wrong person. She believes it was actually Christy.
Oh, wow. So even Eric's mom doesn't trust this verdict. Does she think Timothy was just trying to protect his sister?
Yep.
Wow.
The prosecutor on this case, a man named Derek, said something that stuck with me. He said that in 15 years as a prosecutor, this was the first time he'd ever heard a murder victim's own family openly express that kind of discontent after a guilty conviction.
Such a strange note for a, quote, win to end on.
It really is, because legally this case is closed. Timothy's been convicted, but emotionally for Eric's family, this is nowhere near resolved. And honestly, some of what comes next is going to explain exactly why Kay felt that way.
Yeah, because like we talked about, Christy didn't even get charged really with anything, right?
Right. There's a real reason for that. So July 20th, 2012 is when they sentenced Timothy. He stands up in front of Judge Patrick Flanagan and does something that might surprise you, given everything we've covered.
Oh, what's that?
He maintains his innocence. Even after being convicted by a jury, he tells the judge he's innocent.
After the confession, after the trial, now he's saying he didn't do it.
Yeah, still saying it. I don't know if that confession came on the heels of some kind of substance use or if he thought they were both going to confess and it wouldn't land on him. I don't know, but he says he's innocent. The prosecutor, though, actually lays out the sequence for the record one more time at sentencing. That after Eric was struck while sitting on the couch, Timothy and Christy cleaned up the blood, covered Eric with a tent, put his body in the vehicle, drove around with him for several days before buying the freezer. They used it as a makeshift coffin and buried Eric in the wilderness with the help of a young man from his healing circle who genuinely believed he was doing something spiritual.
So awful. And just somehow laying it out like that is just worse than piece by piece.
Right? It really lands differently, especially when it's the closing summary. The judge hands down the sentence. It's 25 years for the murder itself, plus an additional consecutive term of 3.5 to 16 years for a deadly weapon enhancement.
So really decades potentially.
Potentially, yes. But the number that matters most practically, he becomes eligible for parole after serving at least 13.5 years.
That's really not that long.
No, it's not. That means, if you think about July 2012, that was 14 years ago. So he's already become eligible for parole potentially.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I couldn't find if he had gotten out of prison or if he was denied parole at this point. But that's what he gets. Eligible for parole after 13.5 years, which for murder like that, for second degree, just seems real short. I don't know.
Yeah, I was thinking that too.
Now, like we mentioned, Kay gets to speak at the sentencing, and she tells the judge she loved Timothy, that she knew him as a, quote, kind and gentle soul. She says someone she genuinely thought of as a peacemaker. And then she asks the judge for leniency. She wants his sentence to be time served or for him to be placed on house arrest instead.
Wow. That's really telling. And I'm sure that sounds like now that she's known Timothy and Christy for a really long time. If Timothy and Eric had been best friends for years and years and years, she would have known Christy too.
Exactly. That is so telling. In her mind, and she said it publicly, she just doesn't believe that Timothy is actually the one responsible.
She thinks it's Christy.
She does. So you have this almost unheard of moment in a courtroom. A mother grieving her son, standing up not to ask for the maximum sentence like we usually see, but to advocate for the person who was just convicted of killing him.
That's one of the most heartbreaking things I've heard in a case like this, not because of what happened to Eric. That too, but because of what it says about how broken this whole situation left his family.
Yeah, it's so sad. Kay's belief that the wrong person is behind bars is going to become a lot more understandable once we talk about what happens with Christy next, because legally, almost nothing happens to her at all.
Does she still have the kids?
I believe that the kids were replaced with her mom. It said maternal grandmother.
Okay.
Remember all the way back at the start of this, I told you about this 1911 Nevada law that comes into play in a very real way in this case?
I remember.
So here's the legal reality. Christy, the woman who by her own sworn testimony watched her brother kill her husband, helped move his body, helped clean up the crime scene, helped buy the freezer, move the SUV around, lied to police, Eric's own family for months, all of that, was never charged with a single crime connected to any of that because of this.
That's so wild to me.
Yeah. So there's a Nevada statute from 1911, literally over 100 years old at the time this all happened, or they went to trial at least. And it defined who could legally be considered an accessory after the fact to a crime. It specifically exempted certain family members, including spouses, siblings, parents, grandparents, children, and grandchildren. So if you fell into one of those categories, you were legally protected from being charged, no matter what you did to help cover up the crime.
So because she's his sister, she's just really untouchable.
Legally, yes. If Christy had been Timothy's neighbor or his best friend, or basically anyone other than his sister, prosecutors could have charged her, and they very likely would have. But because of that specific family relationship, the law categorically took that option off the table.
Oh, that's really infuriating. Because I was thinking that too. Like you said, she was charged as a material witness or she was being held as that. But I was thinking, like, yeah, accessory to murder.
Right. Or disposing of a body or lying to police. I mean, there's so many things that
Yeah.
would have been a charge if this had happened in any other state. Now, it gets more infuriating. This law had apparently been sitting on the books, mostly unused and really mostly unknown for over 100 years. A Nevada assemblywoman named Teresa Benitez Thompson later said that when she started researching this and telling people the exemption existed, most people, including people who worked in law, had no idea it was even there.
So this case is actually what exposed it. Did they try and charge Christy with something and her lawyers came back and cited this loophole that she couldn't be?
I didn't see that, but I imagine, yes, I imagine they were trying to charge because if people that worked in law didn't know, police
Yeah,
probably wouldn't know. But
exactly.
yeah, someone knew and
One
kept
person
her.
knew.
Exactly. Yep.
We found the one person.
Yes. Now, in February of 2013, Benitez Thompson introduced a bill, Assembly Bill 116, specifically to close this loophole. And she used Eric's case by name in her testimony to the legislature to explain why it mattered.
So it actually went in front of lawmakers to fix this. So that's not an option anymore in Nevada.
Yes, officially on the record in a committee hearing, which we have the transcript of and will link to, she laid out the whole case for them that Christy admitted to witnessing the murder, admitted to helping move the body by the freezer, lying to investigators, and that none of it could be prosecuted purely because of who her brother was to her.
Wow. How did they react to that?
It sparked a really thoughtful debate. And I don't say that sarcastically. I mean, it genuinely surprised me reading through it because it's not a simple issue. Lawmakers pushed back with real questions, specifically one about, okay, what if a grandparent tells their grandchild to turn themselves in and talk to a lawyer? Is that aiding or is that just being a decent, loving family member? Like, where's the line between comforting someone in crisis and helping them get away with something?
Yeah, I guess that would be a hard line to draw.
Right. They gave the example of like, if your grandchild had just made this horrible mistake and called you to find out what to do, if you say the wrong thing in that instance, are you getting charged too? They wanted to walk through it with as many possible real situations as they could. But Benitez Thompson's answer to that was basically, it's not about the relationship, it's about the actions. So a grandparent who tells their grandson to go talk to a lawyer and turn himself in, that's fine, that's not obstruction. A grandparent who hands him a shovel to help bury evidence, that's not fine, regardless of who they are to each other.
Yes, totally. I was thinking that too. Like, if I was talking to you and you told me to do something, like go turn myself in, if I had done something that's very different than you coming and helping me get rid of a body,
Right,
buying the
exactly.
freezer to do it.
Yes.
Like, there are two very different situations right there.
Absolutely. There was real pushback, though. The ACLU of Nevada and public defenders raised concerns that this could end up criminalizing people who are just naturally turning to family during the worst moment of their life, especially people who can't afford a lawyer and don't know what else to do.
So it's not like everyone just agreed. It seems so obvious to us, but we're not lawyers. So
Right. And it's
a
all
lot more to
about
think about.
how you put it into practice and how it gets applied in real situations. Like, are you using this against people, or is it making it so that someone like Christy can be charged for her actions, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, because to me, it seems so obvious,
Mhm.
but I'm not a lawyer. That's not what I do. I
Right.
don't see all of the different ways that that could be an issue. So it's interesting to hear that it was such a debate and
Yeah,
really there was a lot of back and forth and talking about it.
absolutely. I mean, there really was real tension in that room, but ultimately the bill moved forward in an amended form, removing most of the family exceptions while keeping some protections specifically for spouses and softening the potential sentence for relatives so they wouldn't automatically face felony level punishment the way a stranger would.
Interesting. So if this exact situation happened again in Nevada, someone with like what Christy did could be charged.
Exactly. Which honestly is a strange legacy for this case to have. I mean, Eric's death is the reason that loophole doesn't exist for the next family this happens to, but it came too late to do anything for Eric or for his mom, Kay.
Yeah, kind of a bittersweet kind of justice. It helps everyone else, but not really the person it's actually about, which I feel like happens a lot. We
Yeah.
see laws come to pass because of something that happens.
Oh, agreed. I was thinking that exact same thing. Even getting the Amber Alert that became a thing because of a horrible situation that happened to a family, but
Yeah.
nobody had thought about how that could play out or how it needed some kind of fix until it happened, which I always
Yeah.
think is awful.
Well, and like we talked about Molly Young with her case, how Molly's law it changes
Hmm.
how family members can look at records, right?
Yes. Yep.
Because of
For
things
Molly
that
Young.
probably someone didn't realize
Yeah.
would
Like
cause such an issue with how slow things are. And
the statute of limitations, before you
yeah,
can even get your hands on it, it's gone.
it's gone.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, where does that leave everyone all these years later? Christy has never been charged with anything connected to Eric's death. And as of the last reporting I could find from around the time of the trial in 2012, she had relocated to Southern California, was living there, still not facing any charges.
Just living her life.
Yep, as far as the record shows. Now, here's a detail that never made it into the news coverage of Timothy's trial. Eric Preimesberger was insured for $500,000 through Lincoln National Life Insurance Company. Christy was listed as the primary payee, with her daughter as an additional beneficiary. The insurance company didn't just pay out, though, because there were competing claims on the policy. Lincoln National filed what's called an interpleader action, essentially asking a federal judge to decide who actually deserved the money. On September 17th, 2010, while Eric was still officially a missing person, more than a month before Christy filed her own claim, Christy's father filed a claim on the policy on behalf of his granddaughter. Christy filed her own claim, a competing claim, 5 weeks later. When the settlement was finally reached in October of 2012, after Timothy had already been convicted and sentenced, the money was split 3 ways. So $200,000 went to Christy outright. $250,000 went into a trust for their daughter, which was locked until she turned 18. And the rest was set aside for legal fees, with anything left after that going to Christy. There's no trust structure on record for their son. I believe this is because they set it up shortly after their daughter was born and had never gone back to add him in. Now, in the court records, they asked Christy about this, and they say that she had called the insurance company while she full well knew where Eric was to make sure the insurance policy was still active. And there's also some back and forth about getting money into her account to make sure the payments were still paid so it didn't lapse. before she could collect on it. So Timothy is serving at least 13 and a half years, and Christy walked out of that courtroom a free woman and eventually a couple $100,000 richer. We don't know anything about the relationship between Christy and Timothy since his conviction, whether they're in contact, whether he knows what happened with the insurance money, whether either of them has ever said out loud what they think the other one deserved. I mean, at the end of the day, Timothy is the one who swung the bat, but he's also the one who spent over a decade in prison, while Christy has built a life on the other side of that night. Timothy's defense filed post-trial motions to overturn the verdict and get a new trial. The judge denied both. Eric's mom, Kay, is on record supporting the appeal effort. Kay never stopped believing the wrong person ended up behind bars. She said it at the verdict. She said it at sentencing. And from everything we could find, she's carried that belief for years afterwards, even as she also found some measure of peace in knowing Eric's case directly led to change in Nevada law.
Such a complicated kind of closing. Like something good came out of it, but she never actually got the ending she wanted.
Yeah. And I don't think she will, honestly, because there's no version of this where Eric comes back or where the family fully agrees on what actually happened in that house. And what we're left with is a scooter riding, big-hearted dad who unfortunately trusted the wrong people at the worst possible moment, and a legal system that for over 100 years had a blind spot built right into it for exactly that kind of betrayal.
Such a heavy note, but really an honest one.
Yeah.
Did Timothy ever throw Christy under the bus at all? Did he ever say anything? Because I feel like if she's totally turning you in and she was actually more the one who did it, and you find out she's not going to get charged for anything, that you would flip.
I didn't find that in anything. I did wonder if he thought his version of events that he gave in the confession would implicate her, so they would both be on trial and both facing something. But I don't know when he found out that she wouldn't be tried with anything. I can imagine that was a little bit of a jaw-dropping moment.
Yeah. And I would feel like he would flip and be like, wait, she actually had a big part in this. If she had done it, if it was her, and he had taken the fall at the beginning, but thought they would both be part of it, that he would then be like, no, actually, it was her. But
yeah, like the moment you find out that siblings can't be charged, that's the moment you say, no, she did all of this.
Actually.
Right.
Yeah, totally.
I didn't find that, but I could imagine that would be a path forward, because like, oh, I could get off with nothing then.
Yeah. Because it'd be her word against his, basically.
Exactly. I don't know how they find who actually swung the bat, because that's really all that matters here, because only one of them can be charged.
Yeah, if it's her word versus his word, and you have the victim's family vying for her to be charged, it feels like it has some weight to it.
Exactly, especially where he has this whole following that regard him as this spiritual leader, healer. They're probably going, wait, no, he could not have done this. Yeah. And on his side too.
I wonder what had happened in the past that made Kay feel like so much more that it was Christy rather than Timothy.
I know. I do too. I can't, from everything I read, it just sounds like knowing the two personalities, but I feel like there's got to be more there. Yeah. I don't know if it's instances that she had witnessed or that Eric had told her about.
Yeah.
Something to where she's going, why would Timothy do this? Why would he do this to you? You guys are best friends.
Yeah.
It makes no sense.
Yeah. Right.
And that is the murder of Eric Preimesberger.
So crazy.
Yeah. So sad.
Really interesting case. And really interesting, the change that it brought about. It's so sad for their kids.
I agree. Heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for listening to this episode of Crime Clueless. We appreciate you. If you're looking for the resources that we used to create this episode or to read more about this case, you can find that on our blog. It's on our website, crimeclueless.com, and we will link it in the show notes. We would love to connect with you on social media. We're on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, and we're at Crime Clueless on all of those. We'd love to hear from you. If you enjoyed today's episode, we would be so grateful if you would take a moment to rate, review, or share our podcast. Your support really does help us reach more listeners and grow this amazing community. You can find Crime Clueless on really all streaming platforms, anywhere you listen to podcasts. And with that, as always, remember, refuse to be clueless, careless, or caught off guard.
Not today, murders.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
If you like the show, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. It really does help the show to grow. Thank you for listening.